HarperCollins presents The Button Box by Dilly Court. Read by Annie Aldington. Chapter 1. Drury Lane, London, 1872. It all started with a single button. Clara Carter smiled to herself as she locked the door of Miss Silver's drapery shop in Drury Lane and set off for home. That button was still her pride and joy, secreted away amongst the rest of her collection in the wooden button box that her grandfather had made for her 10th birthday. Grandfather Carter had understood her fascination for small things beautifully crafted, and the button that had fired her imagination had all those qualities. She had spotted it lying in the snow outside St. Mary le Strand Church one Christmas Eve, sparkling like the evening star. The whirls of tiny French paste stones imitated diamonds to perfection. 9-year-old Clara had snatched it up and hidden it inside her fur muff, hoping that no one had seen. Surely something so lovely must be valuable, and the person whose clothing it had adorned would be searching for it. Her conscience had bothered her during midnight mass, but not enough to make her give up her prize. At home, in the comfort of her bedroom at the top of the 4-story house in Wych Street, Clara had hidden the button beneath the feather mattress, away from the prying eyes of her younger sisters, Lizzie, Betsy and Jane. That was 10 years ago, and since then things had changed drastically for the Carter family. Clara wrapped her cloak around her as an icy blast of wind from the north brought the first flakes of snow floating down from an ink-black sky. It was dark now, and the lamplighter was finishing his rounds, leaving islands of yellow light in his wake like a good fairy illuminating a wicked world. Clara had never quite grown out of her romantic childhood fantasies. Her button collection had filled Grandpa's box long ago. Each one held a special memory for her, and they were all precious. Now she was forced to work in the draper's shop out of necessity, but it was no hardship. The long hours and poor pay were compensated for by the pleasure she derived from handling the merchandise. The rainbow colours of the ribbons and the feel of silks and satins as she measured out lengths of fabric were a sensual delight. One day she would own such a shop, but it would not be a tiny one-room establishment like Miss Silver's. Clara had ambition, fired by a visit to Peter Robinson's in Oxford Street, and in the not-too-distant future she was certain that the busy thoroughfare would be filled with large department stores, and one of them would belong to her. She quickened her pace as she headed for Wych Street. Despite the comforting glow from the gaslights, she was well aware that the darkness of the underworld lurked in the narrow alleyways and courts of Seven Dials and the area around Clare Market. St. Giles' Rookery to the north was a place to be avoided even in the daytime. She hurried homeward to the house her family had once owned, but due to her father's addiction to the gaming tables and the enforced sale of the property, they now occupied 2 rooms on the ground floor, paying an exorbitant rent for the privilege of living in damp, draughty accommodation. "Clara?" She stopped, and turned to see Luke Foyle emerge from an alleyway. His tall, broad-shouldered figure cast a grotesque shadow on the frosty pavement. "Oh, it's you," she said crossly. "You scared me." He was at her side in 2 long strides. "A good reason for seeing you safely home." "Luke, I walk this way twice, every day, except Sundays, and I've been doing so for the last 5 years. She was tired, and she walked on. He fell into step beside her. "That's because my name means something round here, Clara. No one takes liberties with my woman." "I wish you wouldn't talk like that. I'm not a piece of property to be squabbled over by rival gangs." He took her hand and tucked it into the crook of his arm, but it was a possessive move rather than a gallant gesture. "I might consider making an honest woman of you if you play your cards right." She shot him a sideways glance. "You take a lot for granted." "Come on, Clara, don't tease me. We've been walking out together for 2 years, and I've had to be satisfied with the occasional kiss and cuddle. I don't know any other red-blooded man who would put up with such a state of affairs." Clara came to a halt, snatching her hand free. "Then find someone else, Luke. I like you a lot, but I don't like the way—"
Sample complete. Ready to continue?